Welcome to Magnificent Minds, where we explore the science of child development with both heart and reason, bringing clarity, compassion, and scientific evidence to questions that matter deeply to families. Today, we're diving into a topic that is both scientifically rich and incredibly important for understanding autism: inflammation. If you're a parent of a child with autism, you've probably heard this word come up somewhere, maybe from another parent, maybe while researching treatments, or maybe from a doctor who said something like, there may be some inflammatory processes involved. But what does that actually mean? Is inflammation a cause of autism? A contributor to autism? Is it a consequence of autism? Does inflammation happen in the brain, the gut, or throughout the body? And most importantly, what does understanding inflammation allow us to do as clinicians, as scientists, and as parents seeking the best care for your child? My goal today is to help you understand what we know, what we don't know yet, and how this knowledge can guide more precise, personalized, and effective care for your child. So let's jump in. When many people hear the word inflammation, they think of swelling, redness, or pain from something like a sprained ankle. But inflammation is much bigger than that. It is one of the body's key biological processes that's necessary in many ways for life to sustain itself. Inflammation is an essential biological response to stress. You can think of it as how the body protects itself and how the body repairs and restores balance. So, where can this go wrong? When does inflammation become harmful? And the answer is when it is chronic, excessive, or misdirected. And this is where our understanding of inflammation intersects with autism. Now, I want to be very clear. Autism is not caused by inflammation alone, not even close. But inflammation is one of the biological pathways that can shape brain development, behavior, and learning in autism. I want to give you a way to think about inflammation and your child. And the best way is, I think, to compare it to an orchestra with all the different instruments. So think about the body's immune system as an orchestra. There are many different instruments playing many different parts. And when everything is in balance, there's beautiful music. But when the timing is off, when some instruments play too loudly, when others don't play at all, the music changes. Now, in the immune system orchestra, there are many different types of cells and many different molecules that work together. The same way, many instruments make up the orchestra and play in a coordinated way to make music. So, what's happening to all these instruments and the music of the immune system in autism? Well, over the last 20 years, scientists have made huge progress in understanding autism and the immune system, especially when it comes to the intimate connection between the brain and the immune system. We sometimes call this the neuroimmune system. And one of the most important players in this system is a type of cell called microglia. Now, that's a word you're going to want to remember. So, microglia are specialized immune cells that live inside the brain and spinal cord. Why are they so important? Because they are essential for brain development and repair. They are sometimes called the gardeners of the brain because they trim synapses, clear debris, respond to injury. Like a gardener sculpts hedges and shrubs and other plants, the microglia sculpt neural pathways. Isn't that amazing? Just think about these tiny cells in the brain at work, sculpting the neural networks that will give your child abilities like language, sensory processing, motor skills, memory, executive function, emotion regulation, and so much more. And to think there are things we can do to help microglia do this job better. And we'll get to that in just a minute because there's a lot you can do. But what I really want you to know, and what will help you later when we talk about the steps you can take to support your child's immune health, is to have a really clear picture of how what you're doing is helping microglia. Because microglia are working hard, just like so much of your child's biology. It's active, dynamic, and doing so much. Microglia are constantly on patrol, and they are first responders. They detect infection or injury. They release inflammatory molecules to protect brain tissue, and they can destroy invading pathogens. They are important, and we can help them do their job well. But before diving into what all those steps are, I want to tell you about the research, because the recommendations I have for you are all based in the highest quality, latest research findings. And I think that knowing this research will give you even more motivation to take steps to help your child's immune system. Now, at this point, you might be thinking to yourself, my child doesn't get sick that much, so their immune system must be fine. But whether your child gets sick a lot or rarely gets sick is not the only indicator of an immune system that's out of balance. So let's look at the research more closely. So first, what we know is that in early childhood, when the brain is wiring at astonishing speed, microglia are incredibly active. This means in the first few years of life, which is usually when the signs of autism first appear, that's also the time when microglia are most active. So this leads us to one of the most meaningful findings in autism research. Some studies show differences in microglial activity, suggesting chronic, low-level neuroinflammation in certain regions of the autistic brain. Let me pause because that's a lot of information to take in. So I'll say it another way. Some research studies have looked at microglia in the brain and also at levels of inflammatory molecules and found that in autism, there are low levels of brain inflammation in some parts of the brain. And this inflammation is chronic, meaning it's not resolving on its own the way a swollen ankle gets better within a few days. So the inflammation in the brain is sticking around. It's not going away. And it's important to understand that there are some limits to what we can conclude from this research. For example, we still don't know if this is true for all autistic children. It's likely that it is for some and possibly not for others. And our ability to test for this outside of specialized research protocols is still unfortunately limited. But there are certain clues you and your doctor can look for, and I'll get to those in just a minute. I also want to say that I know that realizing the immune system in your child's brain is behaving differently and leading to inflammation might be a scary thought. But I hope that instead of fear, you can see this as empowering, because knowledge is power. Okay, so what else does research tell us about autism and the immune system? Well, this part might surprise you. Some of the most important research findings on autism and inflammation actually have to do with the gut, the digestive tract. And why is that? Well, every person's digestive tract, within it are trillions of bacteria that make up the majority of our gut microbiome. Did you know that these microbes actually all together weigh just about as much as the human brain? Well, that's wild, right? So one of the most important things that these microbes do is to train and regulate the immune system. In autism, research consistently finds differences in the gut microbiome. So patterns of microbes that differ from those found in neurotypical children. This is really significant because these microbes in our gut do so many things that influence brain development. For example, they produce neurotransmitters. They train and regulate the immune system. And in these ways and others, they shape inflammation and overall body biochemistry. Now, the gut and the immune system are deeply intertwined. In fact, about 70% of our immune system, that orchestra of molecules and cells, 70% actually lives in the gut. When the gut environment is imbalanced, the immune system becomes activated. And when the immune system becomes activated, it affects the brain. When people refer to the gut brain immune superhighway, they're referring to the tightly connected pathways and the high speed information that travels between these systems. And here's a really important and fascinating finding. One major research study showed that certain gut bacteria produce molecules that directly influence microglial activation in the brain. Now, another research study showed that inflammatory molecules produced in the gut can alter the development of synapses. Synapses are those connections between neurons in the brain. This doesn't mean the gut microbiome causes autism, but it does mean that gut health and immune health are deeply intertwined with brain function. And when we treat the gut, when we improve digestive health and bowel function, the brain functions better. Children often become more regulated, more attentive, more engaged in learning activities. Their memory and executive functions, like organizing, problem solving, and even creativity, strengthen. They sleep better, they communicate better. I've seen this time and time again in my own practice. I want to touch on two more key findings around inflammation and autism. The first has to do with inflammation during pregnancy. Now, anytime we talk about pregnancy and autism, it can be an emotionally sensitive area for many parents. So before I go further, let me say this. Recognizing the role of maternal inflammation in autism is not about blame. It is not about something a parent should have done differently. It's simply just part of understanding how the environment shapes the developing nervous system. So I think it's important to let go of any feelings of blame or guilt that you might have, because those feelings won't help your child. But knowledge and taking action on that knowledge will. So, what do we know from research? Well, we know that inflammation during pregnancy, whether caused by infection, high fever, autoimmune disease, or significant metabolic stress, this can influence fetal brain development. One large study from Sweden followed nearly 1.8 million children and found that maternal infections that were serious enough to require hospitalization were associated with a greater likelihood of autism. Other studies have also had similar findings. So for me, there are two big takeaways from all of this research. Well, one is that inflammation and autism are linked. So it's really important for doctors and parents to understand this and take steps to support the immune system in children with autism. Second is that maternal health during pregnancy is incredibly important and matters both for the health of mom as well as the health of the baby, especially when it comes to brain health. So, taking steps to support maternal health during and leading up to pregnancy is really important. Paying attention to things like stress, nutrition, exercise, and really supporting expectant mothers, it's all so important. One more area of research I want to touch on before getting to therapies is the area of research on autoimmunity. Now, autoimmunity is when the body's immune system mistakenly targets its own tissues. One of the most important research discoveries has been the identification of specific autoimmune antibodies called folate receptor autoantibodies. These antibodies block the transport of folate into the brain, so the movement of folate into the brain. And this can lead to a deficiency of folate in the brain called cerebral folate deficiency. This is a condition that can affect language, behavior, and development, and can lead to autism, can also lead to intellectual disability. Clinical trials have shown that children with these autoantibodies often benefit from leucovorin, a prescription form of folate that can bypass the blocked receptor and get into the brain. Other studies on autoimmunity have been done on mothers of autistic children and have identified maternal autoantibodies that actually target certain parts of the fetus's brain. So when the baby is growing inside the mother, there are some of these maternal antibodies that bind to the baby's brain when they shouldn't. And what researchers believe is happening is that this is affecting the baby's brain and might be contributing to autism. They have actually given this a specific name, maternal autoantibody-related autism. And I will have a full episode on this coming up because the test for these maternal autoantibodies is now available, and it's one that you might be hearing about and might be considering for yourself. All of this research is still quite new, but it really reinforces the idea that the immune system can shape early brain development. So let me sum up the 4 main research areas on autism and the immune system and the key takeaways for you. First, the immune system is deeply involved in brain development. Microglia, inflammation, the gut, pregnancy, and autoimmunity, these are not separate stories. They are all part of how the developing brain is shaped. In autism, the immune system matters. So let's prioritize and take thoughtful steps like improving exercise, nutrition, using dietary supplements, sensory supports, improving sleep, and taking other actions that help the immune system. I'll give you examples of effective steps for all of these in just a moment. The second takeaway from research is that inflammation in autism is often subtle, chronic, and individualized. This isn't about dramatic swelling or acute illness. It's low-level inflammation that may persist in certain brain regions, and it likely affects some autistic children, but not all. Autism is not one immune profile, so anything you do for your child will be based on their unique profile, and there are lots of ways you and your doctor can get this information. Third, the gut-brain immune connection is real and clinically meaningful. Gut microbes help train the immune system and directly influence brain cells like microglia, and they directly influence synapses, those connections between neurons. So supporting gut health directly helps the brain. So this needs to be an important part of your child's care. Fourth, understanding biology is not about blame. It's about guidance. Whether we're talking about pregnancy, immune differences, or autoantibodies, this knowledge gives us options. It helps you move from feeling fear to feeling informed and gets you closer to taking effective actions. So let's move into how you can create a care plan for your child's immune health. I'll start by sharing the experience of one family in my practice. So let me tell you about the experience of this family in my clinic that really brings all of this together. A little boy, we'll call him Mateo, came to us at age 3. He had significant language delays, limited eye contact, he didn't respond to his name, and he had repetitive patterns of play and also extremely selective and restricted eating. His parents described him as constantly irritable and restless, with very frequent meltdowns. When we took a deeper history, important clues emerged. Mateo had asthma, a peanut allergy, and significant environmental allergies, especially to pollen. During allergy seasons, his sleep and behavior worsened. Now, these conditions matter because they tell us his immune system was chronically activated, not just in his airways, but likely throughout his body. His electroencephalogram, so his EEG recording of his brain waves, showed slowing of the background rhythm. This slowing was seen in certain parts of his brain, and what it meant was that his brain's electrical activity was sometimes slower than expected for his age. And this is a pattern we often see when the brain is under some type of metabolic or inflammatory stress. Now, lab work on his blood revealed a few important findings. One was low vitamin D, Another was low vitamin B12, and both of these are essential for immune regulation and brain function. He had several blood tests that pointed to increased inflammatory cell activity, and he also had chronic constipation, bloating, and irritability after eating. All of this pointed to gut driven inflammation. So instead of immediately increasing therapy hours, we started by supporting his biology. First, we focused on gut health and nutrient absorption. We started a high dose, broad spectrum probiotic that improved his bowel movement regularity. We gradually began expanding his diet with nutrient dense whole foods like vegetables, fruits, and high quality fats and proteins. And we used a process called food chaining. It's a step by step process of adding new, healthier foods, but doing so based on their similarities to foods a child will already eat so that the experience isn't stressful for them. So we also replaced ultra processed foods in his diet through gradual, realistic changes, not perfection. Our goal was to get him to eat the rainbow, which means adding fruits and vegetables of different colors to naturally lower inflammation. At the same time, we introduced anti-inflammatory nutritional supplements, carefully, one at a time. Things like omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, B vitamins, including B12, magnesium, zinc, and curcumin. Each was chosen to support immune balance, brain signaling, and nervous system regulation. We also emphasized daily movement and plenty of time outdoors. Physical activity, especially outside, helps regulate the immune system. It supports sleep and it reduces inflammatory signaling in the brain. Simple things like walking, running, climbing, and playing made a real difference for Mateo. Because of his asthma and allergies, we also treated his immune system activation directly. Mateo was started on a medication called Montelukast, which reduced airway inflammation and improved nighttime symptoms. And during allergy flares, antihistamine medications were used as needed. And as his breathing and sleep improved, so did his regulation and attention. And the changes were striking. Within 3 months, his parents said, he just seems more present. He slept better. He was calmer, and he began spontaneously bringing toys to show them. By 6 months, his language was improving, and he was engaging in therapy in ways he never could before. Mateo didn't change because we forced skills or required a 40-hour per week ABA program. He changed because his brain and immune system were finally supported. And that allowed him to learn and reach new goals in his ABA program, in his speech language therapy and occupational therapy programs. And really, he was able to learn throughout all of the different activities and experiences he had during the day. So for your child, be sure you're working with a team of professionals who can evaluate your child's whole health picture, not just behavior, but the biological systems that support learning and development. Now, that often includes a detailed medical history, understanding if autoimmune conditions run in the family, evaluation of digestive symptoms, testing for nutritional deficiencies, laboratory tests on blood and stool for markers of inflammation, assessment of sleep, behavior, sensory processing, and tests like EEG when appropriate. For many children, genetic and metabolic testing also helps to add to our understanding. Because when inflammation is present and we identify the source and any contributing factors, we can treat it. And when we treat inflammation, children often sleep better, regulate emotions more easily, learn more easily, engage socially. They even will digest food more comfortably, which means they can eat a broader range of foods. They show improvement in attention and language and so many different developmental areas. Now, inflammation in autism is not one thing, and it is not the same in every child. And it's also not the whole picture when we think about a child's biology and their neurology, but it is a meaningful part of the story. So, if you remember one thing from today's episode, let it be this: inflammation is one of the biological pathways we should support to help a child with autism thrive. Understanding inflammation helps us understand our children more deeply. It helps us treat underlying sources of discomfort and creates a stronger foundation for learning. It helps us to truly personalize therapy and to improve developmental outcomes. Most importantly, it helps your child feel more at ease in their mind and in their body. Your child's brain is magnificent. Now, your child's biology, though complex, it is beautiful. And when we combine science with compassion, when we look at behavior and biology together, we create the most powerful opportunities for growth. Thank you for being here with me today. If you found this conversation helpful, please share it with another parent or a clinician who may benefit. And as always, I'm grateful to be on this journey with you, this journey toward clarity, toward connection, and toward supporting every child's unique path to thriving. Until next time, take good care of yourself and your family.